I'll second it.
Okay, Todd second and Mark at first. So Dick, would you start us on a vote?
Saunders, aye.
And then Todd,
Spriggs, aye.
Mark,
Hauser, aye.
and Dinsmore, aye. Okay. Item number 3, new business. Recommendations of the city council to accept the draft capital facilities plan. Turn the time over to Rick.
You got it. I clicked on the wrong one. I don't know where the rec conference room was there for a minute. They had power board stuff up on. So we talked about this a little bit last meeting. Again, the capital facilities plan, we update every 2 to 3 years, primarily a 5-year window, but it looks out almost to 10 in general. The closer you are, more accurate you can be. So this is the same document that was sent out. I haven't made any changes. So primarily to see if you have any questions. I mean, I think it was 48 pages of fun reading. But it does set the foundation for the next agenda item as well as the impact fee, and provides a budgeting tool for us as well as, just general planning and make sure the system's up to snuff and with their computer models, and gives us ideas of how we can back up things in case there's a problem somewhere. So again, I'm not sure how much detail you want me to go into. It, has the load forecasts, the history of where we've been, and then the projections for basically the next 10 years are there.
Let's just go through it page by page.
Okay, if you want.
No.
This is the same document we went through last time,
Yes, exactly the
page
same.
by page. Yeah, so.
We didn't go through it page by page,
Well, you did a good job, I
but we
thought.
could.
It was thorough.
So again, the main thing is it's a planning tool for us, budgeting tool, as well as it helps establish the impact fees to address this future growth of, what are we gonna need to have installed to address that. If the system didn't grow today, we'd be fine with what we have. So that's the kind of a good premise to use as we start looking and talking about the impact fee side of things. So, and then I think I didn't see any reason why the board couldn't make a recommendation to the council. I haven't had a chance to talk with Jeremy to find out if he's going to want to present this to the council separately or put them all in one big package to the council when we get to that point. So I'll have to report on that. He's in Mexico, so
Poor guy.
yeah. I think he just left today, so he may be somewhere in between.
So was there any questions on it as you look through?
Well, it looked thorough, looked like we're doing the foundation work now to prepare for some of these things, like the new substation that's all got a beautiful wall around it already.
It does. And we'll show you some pictures. It'll be exciting pictures to go with exciting documents too.
I'd make a motion, if you want, to recommend to accept the draft facilities plan. They're two separate things, right?
Yeah. So this is a bigger document that covers not only growth-related stuff, but there are some projects that are more maintenance-oriented type things. So it's a bigger document. The next item is a smaller, kind of more focused look on growth. Excuse me.
Okay, I'll go ahead and second it.
Well, wait, my question is, are we verbalizing that correctly? We're recommending to the city council to accept the draft,
Guess it could be adopt
or is that being a little, do we need to worry that much about it?
probably adopt might be a little more appropriate.
You just want to amend that a little bit?
Adopt. Okay. I would make a motion that we recommend that the city council adopt the 2024 draft capital facility plan update.
I'll go ahead and second it.
Okay, thank you. Mark, do you want to start us a vote?
Hauser, aye.
And then Todd,
Spriggs, aye.
and Dick,
Saunders, aye.
and Dinsmore, aye. Okay, thank you. Next item, we're flying today. Regular business, item number 4, operations and generation update.
Should have had a
The draft.
3B.
The
Oh.
draft impact fee has got to be.
Oh, sorry. Okay, wait, let's go back to 3B, the impact fee facilities plan.
And I was just trying to bring up this.
That was the one I asked you about, huh?
Yeah. Actually,
So soon we forget.
See, I had all my questions answered, so I didn't.
okay. So the impact fee facilities plan focuses on improvements required to serve new growth. And so it's, those projects are a subset of the ones shown in the previous plan. The majority of the ones are in both. And so this document, and again, this was mainly for discussion. I would suspect this particular document, Jeremy will want to wait until we have the impact fee analysis to go with it. We just sent the PO to UFS today on that, since I just got this document just before I sent out the agendas, or Tara sent them out last week, so it's kind of fresh off the press. But it goes through and just talks a little bit about impact fees in general in Utah. Impact fees, basically the underlying philosophy is new growth should pay for itself and not impact existing customers because you're bringing on, a big load or even a small load for that matter. And so with that, you can only collect impact fees to serve the growth. You can't all of a sudden change your level of service dramatically and put that all on the new people. So it tries to be fair to both existing and future customers. And so that's what these sections are. And this identifies what costs you can include in that: construction, acquiring land, planning, engineering, and if you have to bond for stuff, the interest or debt service charges can also be included in that impact fee. It gives some real, again, this is intended to be a document that could be looked at by not just the power board or city council, somebody that's maybe trying to understand the impact fee and where it comes from. And so it has a little more general language than the previous document, where that's more of an engineering document. So this just gives some basic descriptions of how the power gets here and what's included in the impact fee. So this table here shows existing loads, the exact same numbers that's in the other document. And the 32 megawatts referenced in here, again, comes from the previous study. And that the initial is about 2.3 in the next 5 years, and then the remainder 2.9 after that. So It identifies the level of service is a term used in impact fee world. And so basically this just describes what we provide our customers. And one of the more important one is the second bullet. It says N-1, which means if we lose we have enough redundancy built into our system. If we lose a substation transformer, a segment of, a transmission line or distribution line, we should be able to back that up without super long extended outages. We keep the loading for a peak load under the 90%, the voltage criteria within, that's an industry standard, the 95 to 105%. So that just establishes how they ran their studies was to comply with this level of service in the previous document. So these peak load levels shown here on this table, again, match the ones in the previous document. Again, a little different audience of this document than the previous one. It talks about how they modeled it in this design-based software and identifies the different projects. And so the main part of it is this document outlines basically the projects that are going to be needed to serve anticipated load over the next 5 to 10 years. And so this will serve this 11.4 million basically serves as an input to the impact fee analysis that UFS will do. And so over the new load coming in, we need to generate enough money to cover those improvements, basically. It's not a real complicated formula or approach. They'll add some stuff to it and when they make that presentation to us. Basically, all the projects identified here are fully impact fee eligible, with the exception of the underbuild upgrade. So what we did on that one is we're changing the wire from 4/0 to 477. And so the 40% represents the incremental increase in capacity that we can serve new load from the existing 4/0 conductor. And so that's why the impact fee eligible amount's 1.4, where the total was a little over 1.5 million. And the ones that were purely maintenance projects in the previous study weren't included in here because that's just, again, maintenance that comes out of a different bucket of funds. Does that make sense? Where we're at on that? And so that's where this document, its main purpose is to get to this 1.4 million that we can give to UFS that they can put in their more, and it'll be a little more complex analysis. They, look at interest and all that kind of stuff, but generally you're gonna need to collect this amount of money over the amount of load that you anticipate that serving. So and then the last part, basically they state that we've reviewed the plan. These plans comply with the state of Utah requirements that they're allowed under the Impact Fee Act and those kind of things. And so really we don't need any action on this tonight. I think the main part is that, we've adopted or accepted the capital facilities plan. This is a subset of that goes in, and I would suspect it'll be 2-3 months before we see that analysis back from UFS. But I wanted to get all this put together before we sent the PO to them to start that work, and they've done it previously. I think it was 2 years ago. I'd have to look if it's 2022, something like that. So they keep all that information, basically they build on it. And so it works really well to use them for that impact fee. So main thing on this is just to get you familiar with it. It's a much shorter document, but it does have that different audience. And then if you got any questions, and Mike sent me some earlier, that basically this was the input to another analysis that will be forthcoming in the next, I'd say, probably at least 2, maybe 3 months. So, any other questions? Okay, you guys are easy tonight.
Now we'll go to, I should say, is there any questions?
No.
We'll go now to item number 4, regular business, the operation.
Okay. It's no surprise, growth continues to be there. We're connecting new loads. That really, Drew reports the building permits for the city as a whole, not just necessarily our service area. They're at or above previous years of, the given month. So I think it's right around 100 permits a month that they're getting on townhouses or single family homes. Again, that's for the overall city, not just our area. So even with all the interest and prices, it still seems to be going pretty strong. Lead times are still long. We received some single phase pad mount transformers like you'd see in a new subdivision a couple of weeks ago, and when I was processing the invoice, I noticed the order date versus the delivery date. We were 2 weeks under 2 years to get those transformers in. So that continues to just be a challenge that challenges the industry in general. It's not just here, it's all across the country. So our April peak was 34.4 megawatts, which is the highest May peak that we've had in 4 years. So we have that little warmer stretch towards the end of the month, and I'm pretty sure June's going to exceed that in the next couple days, maybe even today. And it'll just keep going up with temperatures this week expected to be 108, 109, depending on which forecast you look at. At that point, I guess it probably doesn't matter a lot. It's just hot. If you remember, we did pre-purchase gas for June, July, August, and September. So those runs started Saturday on June 1st. They're probably starting up basically as we speak. We have enough gas in June. We run 4 hours, but they've scheduled for Thursday, I think, to run 8 hours. So they'll buy more gas. And gas right now is crazy low for some reason, which is good. We'll take it while we can. Like on the order of $1.30 a decatherm, and a couple years ago it was around $10. So it's just very hard to outguess. But so far, the first 3 days, the units have run well. We had one relay problem. We did a test run on Thursday last week, found a relay problem. We were able to find a replacement and got that replaced. So we're expecting a good run season for the units. As far as projects, one of you mentioned the Grapevine sub and it's being done in conjunction with the Trailhead project, so there's a lot more excavation going on up there than just for the sub site. These are some pictures taken last week. Nothing out of this project. Will end up with a flat site and the fence up is what the power department's portion of this project will end up with. And this was some pictures I took today up there, and they're just putting the drainage around and just finishing. I would suspect they're probably done with the block now. They had like a course and a half of a small section to do. They do still have to put the cap on the top of the wall all the way around. And I probably should have taken a better picture, but up this way to the right of this picture will be where the bathrooms are in the paved parking lot. And then on the, I'm gonna call it probably the west side is where the equestrian parking lot will be. So it'll just have road base and stuff like that. So it'll be a really neat project for the city. And there'll be lots of parking places up there. I fully expect them to be full a lot, just because what you've seen historically along, you know, particularly on weekends, people will park on that exit 13, and so this will be a lot of improvements up there for them. We did place the orders for the transformer, circuit breaker, regulators, and reclosers last month. Unfortunately, the pricing's about 2.5 times what they were when we did the Staley project for basically the exact same equipment. So in 3 years, we're about 2.5 times the cost. So, and that's again ties back to why we need to look at the impact fee calculations, because it all flows that way. So we're collecting on a lower basis for that substation cost than, you know, the substation, this substation cost that we had in the previous impact fee study was much less than it's in reality getting cost. So that's why that study is important, that we are able to recoup those costs. So.
And that'll probably be another 2 years before you actually see equipment, if it's anything like the pad transformers. You just
Yeah, the main substation transformer, they quoted 60 weeks, so a little over a year. So I'll have to see how that goes. I think it was the circuit breaker was like 70 some weeks. So to a certain extent right now, we're kind of collecting parts. And when we get enough parts that we can actually do something with, we will, some of Craig's handiwork here.
Well, and as I recall, the projection was what, end of 26 to have
Yeah,
this
it'll be
up and going.
current budget year, next budget year, and probably the following budget year before it gets completed. Just a quick report on the AMI. Again, we're working on the agreement side of things. That's taking longer than I'd hoped or thought. I sent comments back last week. I got an email today that they said they hope to have most of those resolved by the end of this week. So we'll see how that goes. Again, I would suspect we'll start seeing the system set up and the data collection units between now and the end of the year, and probably actual meters somewhere around the first of the year when they go in. So you may have, if you traveled up Telegraph, notice we've had crews over the last 4 to 6 weeks doing different projects there. We did complete previously from, I don't know, it's probably about 1,000 east back to the other, or to the east. That reconductor work was completed. And then the west section is what they were working on here, replacing this particular transmission pole, relocating it closer to the property line. We had to replace this piece of equipment because it had been hit by a car. I found out a few years ago, when they put it back together, it looked like it was done in a hurry to get the power back on. So it wasn't real useful or functional for the crew. So they took an outage at Cherokee Springs, and is it Horizons West is next to them? And so they've got that reworked, and we did that as part of this project. And these two poles, because of the trees and stuff around, we weren't able to set with our equipment, so Roosh came and helped us out. And it was able to lift it more straight up and over than what we could do with our equipment. And when it's all said and done, most people driving by wouldn't know that we even did anything, so. But the old poles had these, we call them the bayonets, where they did kind of a pole extender, and they're kind of cheesy and you can avoid it. And so the new poles are taller, and we don't have to have that on there. And so that project we're done with up to the point of replacing the conductor on that last section. But I didn't want to have the system kind of chopped up as the loads came up. So they'll do the conductor replacement that's left in the fall, once loads come back down, probably October-ish. But the poles are replaced. They've done a lot of prep work, like replacing that junction box. So it's all ready to go for that. It's just, we didn't dare extend into this higher load period of time, so we've kind of, I'd say we're 75% done with that project, but the rest will be done in the fall. They replaced several other poles. Our solar applications in May, we were only had 7 in May, which is one of the lower months we've had lately. Pole attachment policy that the Power Board and Council approved. We'd given comments on the overhead request to Lumen. Haven't heard back from them, so we're waiting to see on that. They've made a pretty big underground submittal, and Chad's just about through that, giving comments back to them on that. Been trying to do these tables I've been keeping track of at each of our meetings. One really good news is the power costs for April, I don't have May's bill yet, was just under 7 cents, which is as low as it's been in over 3 years. So that's a really good, the power market right now is, this first quarter was just really surprisingly low. So I wouldn't expect it to remain that way for an extended period, but it's kind of the opposite of what we experienced a couple of years ago, so.
Is that, why is that? I mean, is it just favorable conditions, no big issues, or?
I think that's part of it. The other is, we've talked about it before a little bit too, the solar hours. There's so much solar coming onto the system. There are hours that you can buy a megawatt for $1 or 1/10 of a cent, where, normally $70 is pretty good for us. And there's even times in California that it goes negative, that you have to pay somebody to take your power. Doesn't seem like a real good business model, but it's it's the supply and demand. And so you can watch the power prices about 8 o'clock, they start to just drop. And then about 8 o'clock at night, they come back up, so. And there's been plentiful natural gas, and so the natural gas prices are down again, so that, I think it's a perfect storm in a good way right now, but again, I don't expect it to stay that way for
We
years
saw
on
it
end.
when it wasn't that way.
Pardon?
We experienced it
Yes.
when it wasn't that way.
Yes, exactly. And so the good news is on the PCA, you can see the trend is downward on this purple line, and which is a continuation of this kind of hot pink one here. And so the PCA is actually, again, the lowest it's been in over 3 years, so really good thing. And this is what I was alluding to before. The peak in May was almost right on what it was in 2022. And you can see that year, June, July, and August were pretty mild. And it actually was September where the peak was. So I don't know if you can read too much into that, but it'll be interesting. I suspect with the temperatures we're going to see this week, June's going to be up in this range, I would think. So, and last, this is kind of the average. Take the residential kilowatt hours sold divided by the number of residential customers. It was up a little over last year, about the same as the previous couple of years, you know, at 644 on average. Again, we had a pretty mild March and April. You know, it wasn't too hot, wasn't too cold, so I think that helped keep these average usages down as well. Always hate to say it, but well, I do like to say it, but I don't want to jinx ourselves. We had a good month with outages. With the main one, Wayne was on call and he said he got a call. And a family had a birthday party and let all these Mylar balloons go out their backyard, and they went up in an overhead line, and they got a little more of a show than they'd anticipated. So, and he was able to ended up replace the fuse and move on. But power people don't like Mylar balloons because they do nasty things. Shifting to the UAMPS side of things, unless you've got questions on, I was only able to attend, and I did it remotely for the Tuesday meetings because I was on vacation, went back and saw my youngest graduate, so that was good. One of the things I did look at the report that Rachel with UAMPS put together. She does an operations report each month and different topics. So I'm going to kind of go through some of these fast. This is one that she tracks, is the natural gas storage in the mountain and Pacific regions. And you can see the mountain regions. This is the 5-year average band. So the storage is way above what normal. And again, that helps force prices down. She had a slide just showing that coal's down, gas is up. Shouldn't be a big surprise. Let's see, what was the other? A lot of this was the temperature forecast she showed. You know, at least this chart that she got information from was predicting a hotter summer than average. Very likely to be above average, which this week's kind of feeling that way. But the main thing is wanted to at least make you aware. And I've sent some information to Jeremy to find out how much we want to make people aware of potential things that could happen on the Rocky Mountain system. I'm sure everybody's, you know, the Paradise Fire, what was it, 2 or 3 years ago in California, the Lahaina fire last year. There's been fires, and a lot of them they've attributed back to power lines. And so I know they've done this in California. I don't know that they've done much in Utah yet. They've come up with this interesting term, public safety power shutoff. And boil it down, basically if the conditions are right, basically high winds and, you know, low moisture content, the utility may elect to just shut off power before there's even a problem. Okay, so typically this has been implemented in the lower voltage lines, 15, 25 kV lines that may go up a canyon, something like that. Pacific Core ended up with a pretty big liability from a fire that was up, I can't remember if it's Northern California or Southern Oregon. And so I think they're very sensitive to this. And they very well could they'll probably err on the side of caution. Because the idea is, well, if the conditions are right to maybe cause damage to a power line that would drop it to the ground and cause a fire, let's just shut it off. So if that happens, then there won't be a fire. And so that's what they have there's like 100-page document that talks about this whole process. So the main thing I wanted to just kind of boil it down is if you think about how our county is served, basically from Central to just north of St. George, there's 2 double circuit lines that are installed. They're about 150 feet apart. So they're just running parallel with each other. So if they determine that in that corridor, the conditions are right for a fire, and consequently their liability if something happens, I don't think it's unconceivable that they just say, we're shutting it off during that wind event. So that would mean the entire county. There's one very small line that comes in through Tokerville, but it can't even carry Tokerville all the time. So they've had kind of some seminars or webinars on this. Hopefully with weather forecasting, we'd have some notice, 72 hours, 48 hours in advance of when they would anticipate possibly doing it. I think the probability of this happening is relatively low, or quite low. But I think we need to be aware of it, that they could and will do this if they determine, and it's totally out of our control if they were to elect to do this. So,
Well, when I think of the topography of California and the forest and they have a lot more issues, I would think, than what we have for local transmission lines, at least.
potentially, and again, I think that, the population density, I think in proximity to where that may occur is one of their factors. But these are the main points that they've indicated that they'll evaluate. But again, we know we're gonna be hot, we're gonna be dry. We're gonna have low humidity, unlikely that we're gonna have high winds. So we just need to be aware of it, I think is the
So what is our process for that?
We were, in fact, UAMPS just sent out some information today that I haven't really had a chance to digest completely. I've sent it to Rachel, that would give us some templates that we could try to notify our customers if this was to happen or could potentially happen.
Well, and I asked because that one yesterday, I got a text from Kane County, but it came right as they were shutting the power off. So there was no notification in advance.
Right, and in that case where a fire had started and caused the line to come down, that's might be a little different scenario, but yeah, I mean, that's definitely a possibility if this all happened very quickly. And that's very clear in their documentation that if they determine it, they'll do it with no notice too. It would affect the entire county. So I would think, again, that's some of the stuff I've sent this to Jeremy to see how we want to handle it as a city. I would think, obviously, the county would be involved, and It would be a really big deal if this.
Because I think Kane County hit it yesterday, because when I talked to my mom about it, she said she didn't get a notification because their internet servers were down because their power was out.
But
So
that was
they-
because there was a fire. This is preemptive, right?
Yeah,
Preventative.
yeah, this they can do it with, prior to a fire, so they're trying to prevent a fire from happening.
Well, yeah.
So there's two scenarios, either one could happen.
Yeah.
But we don't have a system in this county to do that kind of a notification, do we, set up?
I'm not aware. Are you aware of anything?
And there's nothing the city's participating in.
I think you can do the reverse 911 kind of thing and.
Yeah.
So there's some things that, like I say, this is kind of really fresh, hot off the press stuff. They'll be working with Jeremy, and I would assume he'd want to chat with the other mayors and the county in general. Because it wouldn't be just one city or the other. If this were to, in that corridor, it's everybody. From Ivans to Tokerville, basically. Actually, it would even.
Probably
go down-
depends where it is. Could be
It would-
Gunlock, Enterprise.
Yeah, the main
Depending
corridor
on
would
where
be
it
central
was.
down.
Yeah.
It would actually extend into Littlefield, Arizona. It's fed off the system, so it's, so again, purpose tonight is just to make you aware that this is, are documenting, so they're saying, hey, if we need to, we're gonna do this.
Yeah.
So,
CYA.
and say something, they did do it, they will not re-energize the line until their personnel inspects the line. So, could be short, could be days, just depends on what's going on.
Well,
So
the good
again-
news is it never gets windy here.
Yeah. It's never windy and never hot, so that's good. So one of the things that UAMPS put together in kind of response to that to help all the municipality, and again, it would affect potentially anybody in the state. And it doesn't matter if you're a muni utility or everybody's fed from the Rocky Mountain Transmission System.
Did we put this information into the newsletter and stuff? Did we forward it?
That's what we were talking about, of how to communicate enough so people can be prepared, but not to cause a undue
Panic, yeah.
panic or undue level of concern. But, you know, just like anytime, I think you should be able to survive on your own for at least 72 hours, something like that. You know, we need to be self-sufficient a little bit, and so people need to be ready. And of course, if this were to happen at this time of year, it's gonna be hot as blazes, and so you need to, you know, be ready for it. So this is a little flyer that, actually it's a 3-page, that to try to educate people. One of the possibilities we could do with this is maybe put it on our website. And maybe talk to Rachel, taking a few paragraphs, putting it in the newsletter with a link to this, something like that. So we could at least try to make people aware, like the preparation paragraph, I think would be a good one to have. So again, I don't anticipate it, but I think it was 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, there was a fire, an active burning fire at both ends of those lines at the same time. There was one up at Central and one just north of the St. George sub, so it can, and I would suspect under today's environment, if that were to happen, they probably would have shut those lights off. Yeah. If we had that same scenario come in, if you remember when the Habitat was burning up there, that was the south end, and there was a fire up north of Vale Central area at the same time.
Yeah, well, all these major corporations now realize that they're gonna be held liable or potentially held liable.
Exactly.
And so this is a appropriate action for them to take, but you're right, we gotta let people know, because if it comes along, then they're gonna go, oh my God, what's going on?
Yeah, so we're, and we do have, some local generation that would address some, but I would think we would pare that back to the essential services. We have 6 megawatts of generation, our load's 55, so you're about 10% is what we have. Other cities would have different margins on that. Some of the ones that are served by Rocky Mountain wouldn't have any. So hopefully that never happens. I don't want it to.
How does that work on a solar house? So if a house had solar, would they have power during the day?
It depends on the system. Most would not. Most of
We
them are
have
tied to the grid
batteries, so
and they
when the
drop
power
off.
goes out, we don't even notice it.
There are some that can, but I would say 90% or more of them would drop off. So that's the good news on the pricing side. Be interesting to see how everything plays out. So we'll work with Jeremy and the city staff and others to see how we want to approach this, to make people aware to the appropriate level is what I think we need to determine there. So let's see, other UAMPS items. Again, it's kind of abbreviated because I only was able to attend about half the meetings, and we are getting power now from the solar 1B, which is the one that we have the bigger allocation from. It'll be upwards of 5 megawatts. We have noticed that that particular site seems to be more, I don't know, susceptible, if that's the right term, to clouds going over at the north Idaho-Utah border, as opposed to the Utah-Arizona border at Red Mesa. I guess you think about it, that's probably right. The storms could be up there more than down in the desert, so. The Vail project, they did complete their spring outage. The good news is they didn't find anything unexpected. We're able to address some issues they had, and it's been back up and running, and they should be good to go for the summer. The Vail project has been, its capacity factor in April was only 41%, because they weren't compressing as much natural gas as they typically do. Again, that's the heat source for that project, so if they don't compress gas, there's not much we can get out of it, so. Probably the biggest thing, and the UAMPS meetings are next week in conjunction with the APPA conference, is I hope to get some information on the geothermal project that we're studying. There's a solar with battery project, and then the natural gas project. I believe they've submitted the 2 sites for application with Rocky Mountain for the natural gas project. So again, we're trying to look into the future, outguess what we'll need, what fuel supplies is the best mix, and I'm hope that they all move forward and we can get some of each. I think is the best approach, that we're not locked into any one particular project by itself. I already told you natural gas prices have remained crazy low right now. The wind projects in April were about 30% capacity factor, which is kind of average for them. So, and they're still working with the federal government to completely wind down the CFPP project, so they've said that they aren't moving very fast. I know
Well,
that's a shock, but
Kind of interesting, they had on the news this week that the federal government had decided to put some money into nuclear, I guess, research for specifically for modular and nuclear power.
yeah, and I've seen a couple of those articles too. That's interesting, and you know, I'm hopeful that somebody will be able to get one of those off the ground, because I think it will be a game changer in the industry. But it's getting that
Yep.
going, same problems we had. So that's all I got for you.
Any questions, comments, concerns?
Yeah, I want to know why, if we're buying gas so cheap, that my Dominion bill is still high.
I can't answer that one.
You're a better purchaser than I am.
Wholesale.
Yes.
Wholesale
Yeah, I'm
price.
getting the middleman's getting to me, I think.
All right, looking for a motion for an adjournment.
I'll go ahead and motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Mark seconded, Todd did the first. Dick, would you start us on a vote?
Saunders, aye?
Mark,
Hauser, aye.
Todd,
Briggs, aye.
and Dinsmore, aye. Okay, thank you, everybody, and our next meeting is July 2nd? Okay, July 2nd. We'll see you then.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Rick.